Good.
Hello, here we are again. We are now on chapter 5 of Big Magic. Leslie and myself, there she is, catch up Leslie, a series of our conversations called Unlocking Big Magic, where we are talking about each chapter in Elizabeth Gilbert's book Big Magic. So brief introduction, my name's Cali Bird, I'm an author, I've recently published a novel, I also blog about creativity and encourage people to get over sort of their creative hang-ups and do what they can. Leslie, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will, yes, thank you. I'm Leslie Pyne, author of Finding Joy Beyond Childlessness, just behind me there. And creativity has really been instrumental in supporting me while I was writing that and in developing me since. And yeah, I love it. Love it.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's crack on. So this was the 5th trust chapter, and this really resonated with you, didn't it? I think this chapter. Do you want to talk about that first, Leslie?
Yes, I did. I mean, I write about this bit in my book, and I've written about it in various blogs. And it's mainly about the quote passion versus curiosity. And there's a whole thing about passion and purpose, isn't there? And especially when you get to sort of midlife, if you haven't got one, you kind of feel like you're missing something, and you ought to, and you should have one. And there's a story. If you're in the States, you'll probably be able to find it where Liz talks on an Oprah video about a jackhammer, or are you a jackhammer or a hummingbird? And it's the same sort of thing. She used to tell everyone, follow your passion, and then someone messaged her and said, you've depressed me, I haven't got a passion, I haven't got a purpose. And at that point, she realised there were two kinds of people. Jackhammers, who are focused, loud on passion, they just keep going and going and going till the end of their life following their passion. And hummingbirds, who try different things, they create incredibly rich, complex lives, and they cross-pollinate their world, which I really like that. So I think that my message from that is if you've got a passion and you're following it, you're probably following it anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, if you know what it is, you're probably doing it, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you haven't, then think about what are you interested in? What are you curious about? Because I think she says curiosity asks, is there anything you're interested in? And then you just follow that a little way. And if it continues to capture your interest, you follow it a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Come back and start again, follow something else.
Go to the next thing. Yeah,
exactly, because passion and purpose encourage you to make big, bold decisions, like to, I don't know, sell up your house and go and live in a caravan, whatever. But whereas curiosity, it's like light, gentle, mild. So yeah, and she talks about it as the scavenger hunt of your life, and I love that.
See, I didn't even notice that. We've both had the same chapter, and you've picked out words that I've missed. You know?
I think for me also, it has changed my life, and in lots of ways, because I've started doing lots of different things. I mean, I started with yoga, and that led me to yin yoga, and that led me to training, and that led me to sort of lots of different things. And the same with embroidery, and the other thing I like about curiosity is it's not permanent, is it? I mean, I love embroidery at the moment, and if I stop loving it, I'll stop doing it. It's okay. It's not. It doesn't matter. But it's about saying yes, following something that and maybe it'll lead you to your passion, and maybe it won't. And either of those are okay.
I like that, because years ago when I was doing life coaching, and maybe it was something of the moment as well, this was about like 10, 15 years ago now, there was this big sort of pressure of what's my passion, and you must follow your passion. And clients would come to me and like, I don't know what my passion is. I know I'm not happy with my work, this, that, or the other. I don't know what my passion is. And there was this pressure around it. And there was this pressure, if like, well, your passion was cooking, are you going to make money doing it? And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. I mean, some people do. Good luck to them, and well done as those who've, opened a bakery and actually made it successful, or whatever it might be. But there is a lot of pressure around it, and I like the curiosity. She says it reduces the stakes. and I love her example of curiosity, because she got into it's such an innocent story, isn't it? She was kind of a bit lost where to go. What shall I write next? She moved to this house in New Jersey, got interested in gardening, got a fascination around the historical sort of botanical history of plants and moss, followed her nose through various libraries and a bit of traveling, and eventually wrote a novel, The Signature of All Things, which is that thick, which is essentially about moss, isn't it? You know, it's about a woman's passion about moss, and it tracks history of sort of 18th century history and American history and Captain Cook and Darwin, and you know, but it's amazing that her passion and fascination, she wrote this epic story on it. And she wouldn't have known that. She didn't know that when they moved into this house. She thought, oh yeah, gardening, you know, I'll write a book about this. She didn't know that. So I think, yeah, we can take the pressure off by just thinking, what am I curious about?
And I think also she demonstrates the impermanence of it, isn't it? Because she hasn't gone on to write another book about moss. She's written a book about something else. So it was, she was curious about that, and that's where it led. And there's a great quote. It's your curiosity, it might lead you nowhere, or you might spend your whole life following your curiosity and have absolutely nothing to show for it at the end, except one thing. You will have the satisfaction of knowing that you passed your entire existence in devotion to noble, humble virtue of inquisitiveness. And that should be more than enough for anyone to say that they lived a rich and splendid life.
I really like that. And that comes back to, I think, what we talked about in the very first episode, like what's a creative life? And it isn't necessarily arts with a capital A, though it could be. And it is, about, I don't know, living fully. And I like, she also, around all this thing of passion, curiosity, you know, sometimes, especially with creative pursuits, we get hung up on, will it work? What if it fails? What if it works? You know, we have fear around success, fear around failure. You know, sometimes we try and measure it in terms of, I put X amount of effort in, will it pay me that back in money? And often it doesn't, and yet we have that expectation, or even if we don't, maybe the people around us do. I remember once being at a dinner party, and a friend asked one of my artist friends, well, if you don't make money at it, why do you do it? And you know, and that's, you know, a lot of people say that, and she's like, well, just because, you know, why not? And so, I think we need to free ourselves to do that. She actually poses a very interesting question. Let me find it. It's towards the end of the chapter, page 259, and she's talking about sort of, you know, something might work, it might not work, do it anyway, you don't know until you do it. And very often, and again, this comes up in coaching, we say, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Because that often frees people up to think, oh, well, I'll just have a go anyway. But she twists this question, and she says on page 259, what would you do even if you knew that you might very well fail? And I've never seen that put like that before. And I think, how liberating. How liberating to go, might fail. Gonna do it anyway, or so what, you know. And I think that's what she's trying to get over, that lightness of it is doing it anyway.
This whole chapter is about lightness, isn't it, as well? And because she also talks about the fact that what you produce isn't sacred, but what is sacred is the time that you put into it, that and what that time does to change you, to expand. I think we've talked about that before. I can't remember which chapter.
It must have been I think the enchantment chapter as well, wasn't it?
Because it is that thing, isn't it? That, I mean, I know for me, writing my book, it was that changed me beyond anything. And
I remember seeing the transformation of that. Really.
So, you know, and that was worth it. I mean, it sells, or you know, and the wanting to make a difference with it. Obviously, I'm doing that. But if I didn't sell any copies, that would have been okay, because of the work that I've done to, you know, it was expensive therapy, very expensive therapy, but there you go. But that's the thing, isn't it? You know, it's what would you do? That's an interesting question to ask our readers.
What would you do even if you knew that you might very well fail? I will, that gentle creative people, you will see a blog on this at some point, because I think that's such an interesting question. I suppose it's the same as what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail, because both are freeing you up to follow what's in your heart.
Yeah.
Because, you know, sometimes we know, we get an idea, or it might be about creative stuff. It might be just something we want to do. We want to, I don't know, walk one of those ancient trails or something like that, or, you know, drive across America. It doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to be art with a capital A, but every now and then we get that, like, oh, I really want to do that. And then we find 100 excuses why it's really not a good idea, and perhaps not now, and I can't afford it, and what about my work? And it isn't saying be reckless and give up your job and do it, because you know, in earlier chapters she's very clear about taking care of your responsibilities, but it is about freeing up. Well, could you do it anyway? And what if it doesn't come off? So what? It might not.
And there's quite a bit in here about the when it becomes awful versus interesting. I think she describes it as, and that's that. Be careful not to quit too soon, because that's that you know, if you think it is going to fail or whatever, that often, or there is perhaps I'm speaking personally now, I don't know, there is that potential to stop when things get hard, aren't they, you know? And she taught, there's a quote in there from her friend Rob Bell: don't rush through the experiences and circumstances that have the most capacity to transform you. And I think, you know,
and we often do are resistant to that, aren't we? Or I know certainly with writers, so many writers have got started books but not finished books, because they've hit something in the middle, and for whatever reason can't get through it and don't get through it and just get blocked. And you know, and sometimes you do have to know when to put work on one side and move on, but often it's a blocking thing, or even stops you starting.
And I think you know, part of being a creative person is having a number of uncompleted projects, but then it's also about why have I stopped that? I mean, I'm doing this embroidery project that's it's quite complex, and I did all the easy stitches first. Maybe that was a good thing, I don't know, but I've put it to one side at the moment, because I mean, we're recording this in November, I'm doing some Christmas stuff, but it's going to get harder now. and I will finish it, because she says that, I'm putting it out there, and we'll finish it. But the temptation,
do it now, Leslie.
I know, but the temptation is to rush through the difficult bits and quote, they are the bits that not necessarily transform me, but they will teach me, because I'll learn the new stitches or whatever, you know. So that is that. Okay, that's made me think a bit, really.
There's a discomfort in not being good at something as well. There's a discomfort in learning, but it's only by sitting with that and accepting that you get to the other side, or you get better.
Sit in the hard stuff, isn't it? That's that thing.
But she also talks in this chapter about like martyrism versus being the trickster, which I used to really, when I first read Big Magic, I really struggled with this idea of the trickster, because I think I didn't understand the word, or it's often seen as an archetype in stories or in society, because I think I took it mean as someone who was sort of duping, or a con artist or something, and I didn't quite get that. And actually I've learned through this read through that it doesn't mean that. It's about going about life lightly. It's about dancing through stuff rather than sort of getting turgidly stuck in it. And she makes the point, and again, we've covered this in an earlier chapter, that a few hundred years ago, you know, where ego got more in the way of art, you know, she also says somewhere, you know, a few hundred years ago, the martyrs got hold of creativity and made it hard. You know? And she's, you know, trying to reverse that with that sort of trickster, you know. It doesn't matter how you write a book. I mean, she talks about Brené Brown in here, doesn't she, who dictated her book with friends, giving her feedback, and they went away for a few days and had a good time doing it.
Exactly.
You know? And who says you can't have a good time making stuff, even when you're going through the hard bits, you know? And we just have to let ourselves do that, don't we? And
I think that sometimes
we don't.
It's that tricking the creativity, isn't it, to come out and play. I think that's how can you make it easy for yourself? I mean, why would you want to make it hard? You know, I've been all since from April onwards, I've been doing every Wednesday afternoon, I do crafting with some friends, and it's different people turn up every week, and it's and it's more fun that way. We've all achieved a lot more. We've made mistakes because we're too busy talking, but it's more fun. That's what creativity is all about. It's got to be fun, hasn't it? You know.
Because I mean that. I know I'm hesitating on saying it, because I know I've definitely got sort of martyr energy in me. I think we all have to some extent, but it's And it is about getting that balance, because, you know, someone like Liz Gilbert has a tremendous work ethic,
Yes.
and she will sit there and do it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, sometimes in any endeavor, whether you're training for a marathon or writing a book or building a business, it does demand that you stick with the plan and do it.
Well,
But
I think,
I think we can bring different attitudes to that. You can bring a lightness of attitude
exactly. Yes.
to that, can't you? And I think that's what she's trying to get at, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it depends what you're doing, isn't it? You know, if you're writing your PhD project or you're writing a book, then maybe that's slightly different from making a cake or, you know, my crafting afternoons. But the principle's the same, isn't it? How can I make it easier? How can I make it lighter? And it's not, you know, you don't. Sometimes you might have to be a bit of a martyr, I think, just to get it done, to get it finished.
Yeah.
But it's all about making it easy for yourself, really. You know, choose love. She talks about that very often, doesn't she?
Yeah. And that tricks fear as well. I think that lightness and making it fun, it tricks fear. I often call fear the inner gremlin. And it just, I think it puts it to rest, or you do it anyway and fear hasn't noticed because it's actually had quite a good time, or, you know, and you get past that block.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that in terms of the bits, the hard bits, if you like, that sometimes there's fear going into that, isn't there? When you think, oh, well, what if, and this is hard. And she talks about don't let go of your courage the moment things stop being easy or rewarding. And that maybe, again, that's another moment to bring out the trickster, the lightness. How can you make it? And rather than maybe reframing it into what is it that I can learn out of this, rather than, you know, or think about the positives, think about the end game. That's why you're doing it, isn't it? You know, sort of,
And what that changes. Now we're for time. Your time monitor. Where are we at on time?
17 minutes. Well, you know,
17 minutes. So what would you? Is there anything big we have? I'm about to say, what would be your takeaway?
I've got two, actually. I think.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? And I've got a couple, and then that'll probably bring us roughly around to time. Wouldn't it?
I think in fact, I've probably got three, actually, an end quote. The concept of trusting curiosity, that's been huge for me, and has brought me a lightness and an interest and lots of joy to my life, actually. Indeed, as she says, started the scavenger hunt of my life. I think I'd forgotten about the hummingbird until I just researched it earlier, but I think I'd like to become a hummingbird.
Yeah, you definitely are.
And the thing about hard, and I'm going to change awful to interest, hard versus interesting. You know, sometimes I think I do quit too soon or rush through sometimes things that which have the potential. And there is a quote, sort of, that what else are you going to do with your time on here on earth? Not make things, not do interesting stuff, not follow your love and curiosity. So that's
really good.
I want to do.
And you are.
I am. Yes,
you are definitely.
Yes.
I think for me, there's a couple of things here. She talks very much at the beginning of the chapter about, again, this sort of tormented artist, and that we don't have to be in pain to create. And she talks about how, you know, do we love it? Specifically, she was talking about writing, or being in a writing class. Do we love our writing? Does our writing love us? And I think I'm quite fortunate, because I think I do have quite a good relationship with my writing. You know, I've seen some commentaries where it says, oh, if you know, you've got to hate it if you think it's any good, you're deluding yourself. And I just think that's bullshit. I mean, sure, sometimes that is true, but I'm not going to spend all this time hating what I do because therefore it must be good or better. It's like, no, I want to have a love and attitude to it. So she talks very much about, does what you're doing love you back, or is it just about pain? And so I think I'm fairly fortunate there, or I've sort of got through that. And she also talks about releasing your work. She talks about how very early on in her career, she wrote this short story, and she finally managed to sort of sell it to a magazine. And then they had to cut back the space, and they told her to cut it down. And she said she could either have been precious and said no, and she said in the end, you know, I got my red pencil out and I cut that sucker down to the bone. and actually it did work. And then where is it? Where does she? Hang on, bear with me a second. Pilgrims. well, I can't find the quote I've got written down, but she basically says how, you know, I wrote it, I improved it, I had to cut it, I did it again, I gave it to them, and then I released it and I moved on and did something else.
Exactly.
I know when this book came out 5 years ago, and that was 2 years before I resurrected Tales of the Countess. But I learned so much from it, because I learned to not, again, we've talked about in earlier chapters, not making your work your baby, not
Yeah.
being so emotionally invested in it that
Yeah.
you can't let it go, or you can't let other people have it, criticize it, have their judgments on it. And so I think when I, you know, the first time of reading Big Magic, that was really influential to me, is that, you know, you do it, you put it out there, it's out of your
Yeah.
control, and then you do
Yeah.
something else. And
Yeah.
I, you know, I really think I've benefited from that.
Mm.
And what I've been able to do this year in publishing, you know, after a couple of years work of working on the book and editing it and all kinds of things, it's been great just to release it and just move
Yeah.
on to the next one.
Yeah.
And then I've got one final thing. She talks about this anecdote of a guy going to a really fancy dress do, and he went in a homemade lobster costume and got there, and everyone's the theme of the party was court, and everyone was in really elaborate sort of, you know, French chateau type costumes, and you know, and this guy could have turned and run or brazened it out, and he brazened it out with humor. And I love this quote. It says, "I have never created anything in my life that did not make me feel at some point or another like I was the guy who just walked into a fancy ball wearing a homemade lobster costume.
Yeah.
But you must stubbornly walk into that room regardless, and you must hold your head high. You made it. You get to put it out there. Never apologize for it. Never explain it away. Never be ashamed of it. You did your best with what you knew, and you worked with what you had in the time that you were given. You were invited and you showed up, and you simply cannot do more than that." And I just think that's creativity. That's why we're doing this. You know, that's what I try and live by. You know,
and I miss that
just
quote.
do it.
And yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, that's what we're trying to say to everyone through all these different podcasts, aren't we? Do it lightly.
Just do it.
Enjoy it. Have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a go. Yeah. Have a go. Start. See where it takes you.
And so, I mean, that's what we're doing with this, isn't it? Actually, you know,
this is our curiosity. I mean, and both of us are sort of driven to give this a go and see what happened, really.
Exactly.
You know, and we're just going to put it out there, and then we'll just see. And you know, you guys might like it, it might bomb. We don't know, but we've done it anyway.
Exactly, we have, and we've done it with fun and lightness and a few swear words.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will be back next week with Divinity.
It's the last chapter, isn't it?
It is, and probably a reflection of, I don't know. Well, I don't know what we'll be back with next week. We'll be back with another chapter.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
See you. Bye.
Bye.